This is a pretty great test, right? The recording started. Excellent. Don't you love this test? Right? Isn't that the most wonderful thing? It's happened to me once in my college career. I walked into a class and I did not know there was a test scheduled that day. And that's kind of terrifying, right? That anxiety starts building up, it's going to be graded, how much is this? And you got to just kind of wing it, right? This is a really non-typical question. As far as I know, biology major, there are no such things as SmartMcKins or SmartMcKits or this looking like, as far as I know, those are not biological terms, they're not. But they do, this does provide this very fanciful test, can provide us with some ideas of test-taking strategies. Even if you don't know the information the best, you can work some things out with an innate test to figure out what the answer may be. And so from the outset, I looked around. All y'all did a great job. You read the directions. You didn't put true and false. You wrote X and O, which that's where you always start. Whenever you get a piece of paper, a couple things, and I'll put some of this later, your professors are going to want to make sure you put your name on it, because if they don't, you can take a wonderful and completely ace test, and if you don't have your name on it, I'm sorry, right? They're not going to get that under the sign that wonderful grade to. So make sure you do that. And the second thing is make sure you read directions. And so if your professor wanted to be a jerk and you put T and S instead of the X and O, they can count that off because those are the absent directions. The very first thing, someone just shredded big off and did the true false question, but everyone else did an X and O. That's proud. So let's look at number one. What's the answer? What did you get? SmartMcKins always live under the sea. Is that true or false? So it's false. False. Why is it false?
Everybody knows it's sorry.
Okay. That's right. So, but why would it be false? You're right. It's false. But what?
Common knowledge.
Okay. None of this is common knowledge. Who would we made up?
We think it was under the same bottom, so that kind of thing.
How can something live under a sea? That is very true. How could something live under a sea bottom? There's so much wisdom in that, and sometimes you get so caught up when you're taking the exam, you get nervous, you get anxious, and you're trying to analyze a question every way to Sunday. Sometimes the professor is not trying to trick you. They're going to state a question very simply, and if you overanalyze it, it can really screw you up a little bit. So, but honestly, looking at it lastly, how can something live under the sea? Also, this is something that we'll cover later. In true false questions, stay away from things, absolutes and extreme words like always and never or certainly, because maybe there was that one SmartMcKin that decided he wanted to live above the bottom, right? And that one SmartMcKin would prove that entire question false. So always live under the sea? Maybe not. So that's something to take into. Number two, what did you get? True? What did you get? True. Everyone get true?
No, I didn't. It said that if the first one is right, and they knew that at the bottom of the sea, I would say it's not going to be 89 degrees straight.
How low? But we decided that was false. So that is, I like where your head's at though. So here's the thing. There's really not any way to actually know this answer. So if you for good test takers, if you straight up come across a question where you have absolutely no idea what it might be, skip it. Come back to it. Because here's the deal. Number 10 on your test on answer gives it away. Number 10 says, let me read that out loud. Number 10 says, when a SmartMcKin's body temperature drops below 89 degrees, it will always Vishnook. Vishnooking means, now we'll get to that later, but in the question, in the test, it has given you an answer. So that is true. They do Vishnook because the teacher told me so. Always, if you don't know the answer, skip it. come back to it because there might be other questions, there might be other answers that you find later that will give you information on that.
No, it's true.
It's true, absolutely. All right, number 3. Scientists know that smartphones live longer than assumptions because there are 24 hours in a day and 170 hours in a week. True or false? Find the false.
I shouldn't say the other.
How many hours are there?
More than that.
I think you're wrong with this one. I think it's on PA. It's right there. It's very close. It's not 170. It doesn't matter in a true false, and this plays true in like answers and multiple choice questions. If any part of that question or that answer is false, it makes the entire thing false. Everything else we could believe about this, but that small little number is 2 hours away. You know it's false, so it's false. Number 4, this is my favorite, I think. No, not this one. Smart kids in some cases are organismic classification labels. These labels of smart kids in some cases are not devoid of the letters S, N, K, I, and M. Is that true or false? True. True. That's true. Now, it gets really, really fancy, but basically what the question is asking you is, are these letters in both these things? And they are. S, N, K, I, and O are in those. The thing that gets tricky there, not devoid. That's a double negative. If something is devoid of, that means it's not there. If something is not devoid, that means something is there. So these letters are present in these two classification labels. Be very, very careful of that whenever, and from this later, it seems the double negatives, never misunderstood, or something along those lines, that double means it's positive. Pay very close attention to the wording when it gets very tricky for that type of stuff. And that gives you an answer. Number 5, small percentage assumptions are labels seldom applied to the genre pulpina. True or false? Good, true. Why do you put true? I have no idea. This is our biology major. What's messed up about this question?
I just don't recognize this version. So it
Yeah.
makes me frustrated.
Yeah. Well, are there genres in biology? Yeah, exactly. Genres is something that's applied to music. Very, very basic biology. Pulpina may be a genus or a species or some other biological classification, but genres apply to music. So making sure that if your professor gives you like a glossary of terms that you need to know, make sure you know those things. And if there's something that you don't recognize, the genre, I doubt these creatures under the sea have their own like musical classification. So it's true. It wouldn't be they would not be applied to the genre of music. Number 6, I get tired of saying the name. So we need to find what happens. What did you put? Put A. Put B. What did you put? A. D. Okay. It's A. Couple of things here. One, if you don't, and like I said, you came to this quiz and had no idea what any of this meant. If you just start guessing on an exam, usually the choice that is the longest and most descriptive, that's probably going to be the one that's going to be correct. A couple other things too. Look at the wording of these. It doesn't use absolute, it uses the words usually. The other selections, if you went through it, let me look at it. Make sure I have the wording right. Some sentences always win. If one breed always wins over another, it's not very much defined. It's sort of like predator caught something and ran away and didn't escape. C, smart-tips can bleed white. Why would they bleed white in a fight? just in the chance they fight this one animal, they use a different color than the one that they normally do? Probably not. And these substances retreat. If they always retreat, that's not really a fight either. And so, working each question out, if you don't know the answer, trying to work them all out logically and see if it actually fits on the confines of what they're asking. So, A is the most correct answer. That was interesting. Number 7, what did you get?
B.
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 B. Why did you put B? It says and. Most of your professors are going to be tricky enough and they're going to put that A and parenthesis N so that it can apply to a lot of different things. But sometimes your professors get careless. They have to write a 100-question exam or a 50-question exam. And one thing, they might give you a hint. And so what I would suggest to you is which one of these options fit best within this sentence. And in that one, the and gives it away. It's an obnoxious odor. And that's the clue that gave that away. Sometimes there are other spaces. The length of the space, usually what a lot of professors do in ENIC is they make this a Word document, and then they make sure that there's enough space for that question. And so if it's something like C, a gustatory exhortation, if I can say that out loud, that length would be much longer. You follow me here? Mm-hmm. That could be included. Let's move on to number 8. Smartmakins gives birth to smarter kids can hatch smart eggs. How many young are in each litter? What do you get? C. Who else? C. What if they had 9 in a litter? D would also be correct. Right? Little errors like that may happen. If anything overlaps like that, and also that's very, very close in range. Like, from what we know of biology, like there could be a lot to litter, there could be a little. It kind of depends, right? And so it would be interesting, even if that said 7 to 8, and then another question said 8 to 9. That's very, very close to one another. So pay attention to that, but it could be 9. So pretty much what you're left with that you know of is 1 to 2 or 14 to 15. But you don't know, so we'll come back to that. Very next question, the length of the substance at birth is what? What do you put? D. So D, put an A. Here's my other question. So if it was 12 inches long, it could be A, B, or C. It'd be C too because that's 24 inches. I know this seems kind of silly, but like I said, you got to weigh out those options. Yeah, like I said, if the information is in this test, you could say, well, it could be one of the first 3. So D, they are 125 to 150 feet long. Now I know that applying logic, and this is all fantasy, is a little bit of that's going to kill me, I can tell. But if we basically said that, all right, D is the only answer there. At birth, if they are 125 feet, are they having 14 to 15 of the suckers? Probably not. 1 to 2 seems very, very, seems like a whale. Yeah, it's basically a massive baby whale, and they have maybe 1 to 2 in the litter. So that makes a little bit more sense, right? If you really wanted to say D, sure, but I mean that could happen. But when you are taking these kind of tests, you want to usually, and I hate it when professors say this, but it is true. They'll often say, pick the most correct answer. always frustrates me, but they will say that in this idea, but with that idea, what makes the most sense here is going to do. Last one, we will move on to Justice County. Spartan's body temperature drops below 89 degrees. It will always Vishnu. Vishnuking means A, shivering, B, turn blue or green, C, shrinking, D, all of the above. We'll go again. Got all the above, right? Why was all the above? Do it.
I don't know what it
It's something very familiar to someone, and all three of those similar. If they are shrinking, if they are just put it down, they're changing colors to blue or green, they're shivering. Those are all things we do, right? And then when we get cold, we start shivering, we turn blue or green. We kind of get smaller in our body, that's the way we feel. So all of those a couple things here, they don't contradict one another. An answer could never be all of the above if you know for certain one of the answers is wrong. So the A and C can sound really, really good, but if D was like, you know what, I know this really doesn't apply. Let's be one piece of knowledge that I got out of that day. It can't be all of the above. You have to work out from there. But most likely, a lot of times, if all three of those sound like possible answers, it is usually all the above. And I would say, you don't know the answer for the most part, in all of the above questions is usually correct. We're going to move on. I know this is really silly, and I know, but it does give you an idea of what you can do to do well on a test, even if you're not very well prepared. Okay. First things first, whenever you're preparing for an exam, the way you prepare for it, and I'm not even talking about just studying, but mentally preparing for it, makes a huge difference. Make sure you get plenty of rest. I know I was terrible at this in college sometimes. I thought if I stayed up and I crammed, it would help. But oftentimes, if I didn't get enough sleep, it hurt because your brain needs probably 6 to 7 hours of full sleep leading up to an exam. Exactly. For you to take everything in. For your brain to be working optimally well, you need to get some sleep. And so I'm not saying that you shouldn't study the night before, but study for a few hours and you get in bed. It really helps. Here's my favorite little tidbit. I said it was in psychology. Here's that maybe you've learned. You learned about stasis and disharmony. Let me give you a little tip. Get in your, whenever you're in any classes, if you can, if you have a sign sheet, that's great. I know you probably hate sign sheets. I know I used to jump around a little bit when I was in class. I was this sheet one day and this sheet next. Is it all possible in a class, sit in the same sheet every single day? Sit in the same sheet that you learned all of your information in. Exactly. Something called state-dependent learning. You are much more likely to recall things in your head if you're in the same situation that you had when you learned it. So where would you normally wear? If you're usually freezing cold in class, and you're bundled up in a sweatshirt, wear that sweatshirt to the test. I don't want you to be burning up. I don't want you to be really, really cold if you're used to being warm when you learn the information. Also, I never, and you have used to tell me for this, I don't advocate tobacco use, but if you're adults, if you use tobacco, that is a drug, just like everything else. Nicotine is a drug. And if you learn this information, I know a lot of these frat boys, they like to dip, right, while they're in class, or they like to take notes. If you learn this information while you are under the influence of nicotine, you should probably have nicotine in your system while you are giving an exam. Because the state that you're in, chemical state of your head, physical state of your body, the mental state of where you're at, you're going to recall that information so much better. And so make sure that you can get there early, and I would say look over your notes and study. Because if you're in that room, you just looked over the exam, the information is going to come to you a little bit easier. Listening to any carefully to instructions given, a lot of times, you come in, you go out, you just want to take the test, and one of the GAs up top, and they're talking, and you're like, oh, I don't want to listen, I just want to take the test on the lead. Try your best to listen to what they have to say, because they may be giving you information that is helpful on the test. Then there may be an issue with the test. They may have found something at the very last moment, and they could tell you, okay, number 7 is tricky, cross out option A, or something similar, or this is the answer to it. And maybe they're not going to repeat that information yet. Listen to what they have to say. Y'all did this well. You read the written instructions carefully. Y'all probably heard urban legends, but I've heard several people tell similar stories of how in a long list of instructions, a professor will say, skip the first 8 questions if you read the instructions and start on page 2. And if any of their students started writing down questions writing their answers on 1 through 10, they know that they weren't paying attention and they get a discount for it. So not only that, all the instructions might give you a clue to something on the test that you might otherwise have gotten. If I were giving you this test and you put a T and F instead of the action O, I could have counted you off of that because that's not what I asked for. So make sure you pay attention to that. And lastly, I said that write your name on the test. Can't tell you because I've taught classes before. There's nothing more like just really infuriating than getting 2 or 3 papers and then they're like, all right, whose paper is this? Whose test is this? Always write your name down. During the exam, a couple of things to focus on. If you're getting really stressed, it's getting really hard to focus. Take a small mental break. Close your eyes. Focus on your breathing. It's something I'll talk about later. Also, what I would do is I would pause in between sections. So maybe you just finished a very challenging maths section, or a true false section, or multiple choice, and now you have to write an essay. That is a completely different part of your brain from going from multiple choice to essay. You're going to have to switch gears with that. And so I usually recommend if you have to switch it up, take a moment, take a breath, clear your mind, and then move on to the rest of the section. As I said earlier, skip any answer that you don't already know and come back to it. From the beginning, know how long you have to take the exam. So if you have an hour, plan on being there for an hour. If you have an hour and a half, plan on being there for an hour and a half. Before you even put one answer to paper, look over the entire text because you never know. You might hit a section that you didn't know was there. Maybe there were like 35 multiple choice questions, but at the end of this test, there are now 2 essay questions. And maybe you thought the only thing I have to do was fill out 35 or 40 multiple choice questions. And maybe you spent a really, really long time doing that, and you got to the end of the page and you're like, oh crap, I have to write a 5-paragraph essay now. Make sure that you know everything that you have to do and estimate in your head how long it normally takes you to fill out those sections so that you are planning accordingly and giving yourself time to fulfill each part of the test. Also, budget to complete the exam with 5 or 10 minutes to spare if you can. Because once you've told the very last thing, maybe there are some things in the latter half of the exam that trigger something that you may have didn't think about the first part when you first took the first part of the test. And so give yourself 5 to 10 minutes or maybe more to look over every single thing that you put down to make sure that that still seems true. Very simple. Outside of that, your first instinct is usually correct. Usually go with your guts. Don't try to, the worst thing is whenever you're panicked, you're talking yourself in and out of an answer, and it's just getting more and more confusing in your head. Usually your first instinct is correct. And like I said, pretty much the entire test that I just gave you, pay attention to the question or answer. It could give you a clue somewhere else. Specifically, true false questions. You can look at your exam and think of exams that you've taken and think about this. Look at any part of the statement, like I said earlier. If any part of it is wrong, it makes the entire thing false. And so it could be the best answer ever, but if it has 170 hours in a week, it's wrong. It's false. And like I said, it's the same thing for multiple choice questions as well. If your answer C is the best answer ever, and there's a part of it that you just know is not correct, that's not going to be the right answer. This is if you don't know the answer straight up, cannot tell. Usually, it is more likely to be true than false. Sometimes it takes professors a little while if they want to make a question false. It takes them a really long time to come up with a way to word something to make it false. Because what they're doing is they're taking true facts and they're trying to make it false. And so I would often say it's not on there, but the wording, if it seems very awkward, usually it's because they're trying to make it false. And so if the question reads very clear, clean, and well, it's most likely true. Avoid these extreme modifiers. So if things are saying always, never, no one is the best, or absolutely, they tend to make the statement false. Because, like I said, there are always well-known exclusions to a rule. They usually are. And kind of the flip side of that is if they use words like usually or normally or generally, that usually makes questions true because it's a broad principle, not an absolute statement. Pay attention to the negative statements, like I said earlier, the not, the missed, because they change the meaning of the statement. As I said, the double negatives, never unimportant, not uncommon, that makes something, that makes a positive statement. So make sure you pay attention to add-ons like those. And then last, general words like usually, normally, and most often true, like I said. All right. Wish I had a clicker. All right, we're shifting. So, stay there. All right, multiple choice. Again, you question. I don't know if your professors allow you to do that in the middle of the day, maybe it's distracting, but if you really, really need to take a mental break, ask if you can just stand up for a minute. It helps get the blood flowing. It really does. It refocuses your attention. Multiple choice exams. This is my favorite bit of advice. Before looking at the choices, what answer becomes to mind immediately? If you can, without being influenced by anything that you see from A, B, C, or D, or some of those evil professors that put E or F, like 10 choices that they're trying to expect, if you can answer the question that you think pretty well without looking at the choices, that pretty much confirms for you. It's like, oh, this is what I think it is, and then this choice lines up exactly with what I thought. That's a pretty good indicator that it's going to be correct. As you go through, working through 4 choices, if you're not completely sure of what it is, cross out what you know does not fit, and so that you're eliminating options and making sure that you're giving yourself a better opportunity to make a correct guess. Selecting more detailed and longer answers, they're not certainly the shorter ones correct. I think one of the options on that test was like that. It was longer and more detailed. That's usually the one that they do. They can throw red herrings in there. That's not an always statement, but it usually is correct, unless you know that one of those short ones is right. Here's something. If you're really stuck, a lot of times that professors will make these really, really long statements, and you don't even really know what they're asking. That can be a problem, I'm sure, in biology. They'll have a question that's like a paragraph long, and then they're like, which one is it? Like, I don't even know what you're asking. Carefully read through it. And if you have to, underline the subjects, verbs, negatives, any key facts, so that you can focus on really what it's trying to tell you to do, to get the focus on the core of the question. And then lastly, my favorite, when filling it out on the Scantron, which that's most of my exams, make sure the answer that you're writing down is corresponding with each question. Cannot tell you how stressed I've been before when I basically missed a row, or I realized that the past 10 questions that I wrote down was for the question, the next one, instead of the one I was thinking it was. So make sure you're doing that as you're lining up, because that would be awful. You do really, really well on the test, and you get back and you score like a 36 because of that.
Well, what are those questions? I've seen them several times. Sometimes they contradict themselves on the but it'll read a multiple choice question, and sometimes we'll have the option of all of the above. Except for the all of the above option will be in the B place, and other answers will be loaded. And you can't choose all of the above because the answers are not all of the above that statement. That's the way I think it was in that. Probably silly, but
I did not know that.
Wrong, everybody.
That is a whole other level of treachery. I've not actually seen that on an exam before.
The answer was all above, and it was going to be slightly, so it was very hard.
Wow. I think that's not going to already tell you the reason why you don't do all tests, take it very literally, don't you?
I mean, I
overthink a lot of things, yeah. I get where you're coming from. I really do. This is just a random bit of information. I don't think I put it on here. Never be, like, it is okay to ask questions on your exam. I know your professor generally hates it, but something like that, I would definitely be like, hey, the only option above this line is A. So are you saying all of the rest of the answers are correct? Is that what you're saying? Yes or no? If I was a professor and I made that kind of mistake, I would give you that information. And I'm going to tell you this, like, I'm not saying that teachers should curve grades because they like you or not, but I can tell you this. If you show up to class, if you go to their office hours, if you ask questions in class, if you demonstrate to your professor that you were there to learn and that you care about your grade, they might be a little bit more willing to be helpful to you during a test than if last week they saw you sleeping in the back. I'm just saying, I know professors, and honestly, I'm one of them. I'm teaching the class. I'm much more happy to give information like that to a student that is earnestly looking for a good grade than a kid that's just like, oh, what, I'm confused because I'm unprepared.
Also on that, they play differently when it's online first. It's online test.
That is tough. Absolutely. Next, we're looking at matching questions. Maybe I used to hate matching, but there is a little bit of strategy to it. Very first thing is make sure you look at both sides of the list before you start. Make sure that you know every single term, and in your head, even if you don't know one, that you are looking at every single one on both sides. Because I would hate for you to get started and then get to the second half of the list and be like, oh, wait. I remember this tripped me up one time because a matching question was on the second page. And so I had a page and I was like, oh, all of this makes sense. And I had matched like A through like H And then I turned the page, and like another bunch of questions were on there, and I was like, no, that's awful. I hated my professor for that. That's just bad test writing. But make sure that you have that. Go through the entire list and select your certain answers before moving on. I feel like, that's the key to matching, obviously. But also, make sure you clearly, if you are certain something is there, that's what your gut is telling you. Don't play this game of like, oh, well, maybe, you're trying to fill in those last few ones that you don't know. Oh, I'm not really sure. Do I need to go back and rework my list? Probably just get your 3 answers in and move on. But make sure you're crossing those answers off when you start the whole match. Very kind of basic common sense stuff. Talked about this earlier. Look at the length of the blank, and you will often see the length of your answer. Not always, but that can give you a clue. And if you're not, the second thing is, and this is true, I've seen this with a lot of professors. If you write a descriptive answer, sometimes they'll give you partial credit if you're close. Say you can tell you can name everything but the definition of what he's wanting to ask, but you can demonstrate that you know what it is. They might give you half the question right. They might give you 3/4 of it right. I know a lot of times I was very little sometimes when I was taking tests, and I was just like, well, I don't know it, so I'm not going to put it in there. But oftentimes, some of my friends would get partial credit because they would do things. They would do things like this. Because the thing is, most of your professors want the point of the entire test is to demonstrate that you've learned, right? That is the point of an exam. Most of your professors want to know that you've learned something. And so, with this opportunity, anytime you have an essay, which we'll cover in just a second, that you can demonstrate to them that you have learned something in this class, then you really appreciate it. And so even if it doesn't say, you can, if it's kind of ambiguous whether or not you can know the descriptive answer, you can always put it on there. The only thing they can say is you don't get credit for it. That hurts to try. The dreaded essay, and this is going to be a couple slides. Just like everything else, when you get to, and especially the essay, it's so unlike anything else that you do, and so whenever you get to it, you need to take some time to prepare for it. If they allow a separate sheet of paper, that would be great. They can allow some scrap sheet that you can bring in, that you can organize the structure of your essay in your head, kind of just make a brief outline like you used to do in 10th grade of an essay. And if you're really struggling, how am I going to organize this? Do it in the very basic, what you learned in 7th grade, write a 5-paragraph essay. And I know that probably you don't need to do this in English comp class. They would probably don't want this. But for you to organize things in your head, basically 5-paragraph essay, tell me what you're going to tell me. Tell me what you told me. It's a basic 5-paragraph essay. If you can write that out and graph it, that usually helps. At least get you a start so that you're not starting from scratch. You get a question and you just write away. What helps a lot of people is to rephrase the question as a statement in your introduction. So if you were taking a world history class or a Western civilization class, and they ask you, how did the Cold War spur innovations in technology? Well, it did a lot of different things, which I'm not here to tell you about that. But maybe a start to that would look something like this. The advances in technology made during the Cold War were a product of yada, 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 yada. Rephrasing that helps you get started if you don't know where to start. couple other things. My handwriting got a whole lot better. I learned cursive back again. I didn't use it after third grade. I'm using it again. It's nice. But whatever you have to do, whether it's writing cursive or print, make sure it's written clearly, because the only thing more frustrating than their name on paper is if somebody has written me 5 pages of an essay and I can read maybe 25 words. They can't grade what they don't, what they can't read. And so make sure you make a concerted effort to write legibly. And then the other, the most important part, honestly, with an essay question, your professors will get really tripped over this. Make sure you are answering the question that they ask you. And here's just an idea of some of the terms that they use. If they ask you to summarize the effects of the Cold War on technology, you just give them a kind of an overview of the topic, very short, very sweet, maybe in 2 paragraphs. You can tell them wide swaths of information. If they say something like explain or discuss or something along those lines, they want something a little bit more detailed than just, very basic information. If they ask you something like synthesize, to synthesize something is to take 2 or more multiple points and explain how they come together in a question. And so they might say, you know, how did the space race and a burgeoning economy and this in the third world, three different topics, converge to make new technology. So not only do you have to give a brief overview of those 3, you have to tell them how they all work together to make a current environment. And that's what synthesizing is, taking 2 multiple topics and kind of tying the ends together. They're asking you to defend or argue or justify. They are wanting you to write in favor of a topic or an opinion or a concept. And it's the same thing too. If they might ask you to argue against a certain motion. So they want to see where your head's at and see, even if it's something that you don't personally agree with, that you understand the argument, you understand the concept of something that you might not necessarily agree with. And then lastly, to compare and contrast, right, the similarities and differences between terminal points. So it's kind of the same thing. If there's 2 or 3 points, maybe you don't have to synthesize them, but you have to make sure that you can demonstrate that you know the difference between the 2. A perfect example would be, I'm reaching back here, but say if Stalin and Lenin, people, there are 2 very different leaders. But in world history, you hear those and you think, they were the same guy. Actually, they had to do some different policies. They had some things in common, but they had some differences. A better example would be, compare what are the similarities and differences between George W. Bush's 8 years and President Obama's 8 years. As a top of issue, there are similarities. There are certain policies between those 2 that they have carried on, but there are some stark differences. And so making sure that you can tease those out, that's what they want to see. So whenever you're writing essays, looking at the question, pay attention to those words to see exactly what direction that your professor wants you to take on this exam. And this might be, if you're not sure, make sure you ask. If you read the question, you're like, I'm not sure where they want to go with this, make sure you ask, because sometimes you'll get papers and they're just, if you ask them to synthesize something, the only thing they did was summarize it. And that you're going to get deeply discounted when that happens. Last thing, so that kind of covered a lot of specific things, but I found recently, if you didn't know, I just put this stuff here, but my job, I'm in college administration. I love college students. That's what my career is. And paying attention to national trends average, if you talk to any counseling services on any college campus 10 years ago, you would ask them what's the biggest issue with college students, and they would say depression. By a large margin is depression. If you ask them today, anxiety is number one, and it is separating itself. Anxiety, for some reason, has become more and more prevalent throughout college students. It's the number one mental health issue with college students right now. And a lot of this is based on expectations, and a lot of people have test anxiety. They have a history of not taking tests well. Y'all are at a school where a lot of people have aspirations for going and getting another degree after the bachelor's degree, and so they feel like every single class means something, and if they don't do well on every single test, and they're failing, and that causes anxiety. If that's something that you feel like that describes you, please go to the UAB Student Health and Wellness Center. I know there's a lot of stigma involved. People, I want to go see a therapist, I want to see a counselor. They help with things like test anxiety specifically. Maybe you're fine. Maybe there could be nothing else going on with you, but if you really have an issue with it, they can work you through some strategies. So I was telling you first, if this is really consistent and probably an issue for you to do that. Very simple, uab.edu/student-health, and you can set up an appointment there. In addition, they do a wide variety of things. If you have more broad-based anxiety, if you have depression, if you have other issues, even if it's something like, I'm not getting along with my boyfriend, I want couples therapy, they can do that. If you want to just individual counseling sessions, they can do that. Maybe you're not getting along with your roommate. Maybe you need conflict resolution and you don't have an RA to do that with. They can do that. Anyway, let me get out of the box. Obviously, it helps if you actually prepare for the exam. It usually helps anxiety. The more you actually know the material, the better you're going to do, and that probably will help a little bit. Knowing that you have done all that you can do can be reassuring. So if you prepare well enough in advance, maybe that can cut down a little bit on the anxiety. A couple things that I'm not doing well right now. Sorry, for shit. Keep hydrated. Drink water. Your brain functions very, very well at best when you keep hydrated. And so make sure you have water with you. Make sure you're drinking water throughout the day. Exercise briefly. You have to do some workout. There's like an hour before the exam, and you're just getting ready to get ready. Go for a run for like 10 minutes. Walk around. Do something. Get up. Start moving. Because the more active your body is, the more active your mind is. And so if you want to just work out, exercise somewhat briefly, that can help calm you down, and it can help get your blood flowing and get your brain flowing. Like I said earlier, if you get in there early and you get comfortable, that can really, really help you with all things on the exam. Make sure that you're prepared. Get pencil, paper, Scantron, calculator. Have just like an absurd amount. Just have 15 pencils in your backpack. Have 10 pens. Have 14 Scantrons. You might be the guy or girl that choose that cute guy or girl next to you. You're like, oh yeah, I got you. You forgot your Scantron, but I have it right here for you. Bring extras, calculators, all that stuff. Make sure that that is not going to be words for you. That you get there and like, oh my God, I don't have a pencil. I forgot a Scantron. That will help. Knowing that you are physically and mentally prepared to take the exam will help with anxiety. My favorite thing, focus on breathing. Yeah, sorry. I did this earlier. I'm telling you. This is my one-off gift to anybody that will listen to me. You can learn to breathe and focus on your breathing. It helps so many things. Test anxiety, things in general. This happened to me this week. I accidentally parked in a handicap zone. I feel truly terrible. But I feel really, really bad about the $500 ticket that I got. I was really upset. $500 is basically a month's rent for me, so that's pretty substantial. I was very, very upset. And one of the only things that calm me down is I know how to focus on my breathing. It's not yoga or any of that stuff. It's just focusing on filling your entire lungs with breath. So breathe in through your nose. Do this with me. All right, we're doing this. Next exercise. All right. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. Feel even the very tip of your lungs and hold it. And then slowly exhale. Do that a couple times. Hold it. Slowly exhale. If you focus on that, drive every other distraction about the test, about what's going on in your life, about how you're never going to be out of debt ever. Focus on the breathing. I can't tell you how well that does for me. Calms your mind. It calms your body. It increases oxygen intake, and the more oxygenated your blood is, the better that your brain can work. So make sure you're breathing well. You know, you get anxious, you can get out of breath, take shorter breaths. You get anxious, you get worked up. You can calm that down. You have the ability to. And let it go. I'm going to get off that soapbox. It's my favorite thing. But if you can learn to do that, I can tell you that if you struggle with anxiety, it helps in so many situations. Like I said earlier, occasionally stretch your body to keep it comfortable. If you're really, really uptight, if you are sitting in an uncomfortable chair, like I said, get another chair. All of those things can be distracting when you're taking an exam. Make sure you're comfortable. I do want to say that some people that have problems with anxiety, they do their best, their dangest to fight it, and they feel like if any level of anxiety comes in, they should immediately lose it. So they go from, oh my God, I have anxiety now, and then that just makes them more anxious, and they completely spaz out. And they just, some people have this fear enough where they like literally have to leave the room, or they have to get special accommodations to take an exam by themselves. And that's perfectly legitimate. That happens. But I do want to say that some level of anxiety for people, that's normal. It's even productive. It's good. Just a little bit of anxiety gets the blood pumping a little bit. You don't want to get too worked up. You can bring that down to the breathing. But that little bit of anxiety makes you write answers a little bit more. Words flow out of your head a little bit better. It gives you pressure to maybe finish up the exam before you have to turn it in. That's okay. You just don't let it control you. And the last thing, I know it's counterintuitive, or it's not even counterintuitive, it just sounds dumb. If you're anxious, you're worried. Don't be worried. Stay positive. If you allow this negativity, if you're anxious and you think negative thoughts about things, that's not good. You're not in a good mental mind frame to take an exam if you're going negative. I'm at the bottom of this question, I'm bottom of the section, I'm bottom of the entire test. I'm never, and so that negativity breeds some more negativity of, well, if I'm on this test, I'm going to fail class, and I have to retake it, so I have that money, oh my God, it's a life crisis, because you got one question wrong. Let it go. Don't let it get to my life is over because I missed one question. You can't let it get there. Miss one question, that's all right. Move on. Stay positive even if things aren't perfect, because a positive mind frame will help you successfully navigate the rest of the test or exam much better than you would if you're stressing out or letting yourself go unconscious. This is the last slide. That's pretty much it. I do want to give credit. I got a lot of this information from the VOA Career Center, Career Success Center, and the St. Mary's College of California. They have websites. Look up this stuff online. I would encourage you that you will set thinking strategies, anything specific maybe we didn't cover today. That's a good opportunity to say if there's something specific with math. I didn't cover anything with math today. Because if I was teaching math, it would just be lose like 2 points. It would be bad. So maybe there are probably some things out there that help you study or prepare for math tests, or maybe there are study skills that you can learn while studying for biology. So make sure that the internet's your friend. I promise there are other things that kids can use. So make sure you check those websites out. Are there any questions? Anything that maybe we talked about today that you'd like me to talk about a little bit more, or that I could expound upon?
Okay, I had this statement. I mean, it's more of a complaint, but still I'm looking for advice on how to deal with it. But at the same time, I almost kind of know how to deal with it.
Okay.
It's all about the stress of, you go to class all the time. You're never late. You study until you can't study no more. You're walking in, even if you get plenty of rest, plenty to eat, you exercise, you're perfectly exams, and you do bad, but not too bad. And on your assignments, you do all right. Really. You see the other students beside you, they make higher grades than you, and they don't do really anything. And the teacher, if they show them a little bit more respect than you, you get all mad because you've done all your work and you know they haven't. But I mean, your heart is more into the subject than they are, and you're not getting what you need to see.
I would say a couple things. One is that grades are not a competition. We always look at making a competition. Well, how did my buddy do? You need to leave. You can leave. It's fine. But it's not a competition. Like you were only competing with yourself. You were doing this for yourself. You are not needing grades for anyone else. You don't have any control on anybody else's grades. They give you an idea where you are in relation to your peers, but honestly, you should be competing only with yourself and only what you can control. Second, if you are doing everything that you can do and you're still not getting the material, you need to go to office hours. You need to talk to your professor when that's available. You need to make sure that you make time to do that, because maybe could be a couple things. They could not be teaching to your learning style, and that's a completely other lesson that maybe somebody else is going to cover for you guys. But if your learning style is not lecture, I am an auditory learner. I love discussion and I love to hear things, and so you'll notice that the way I teach is that I like to talk. I like to talk to other people. I like to ask questions. I like to have the discussion. And that's how I learn. And I do really well in any of the classes that implement discussion, or I'm listening to a lecturer who knows a lot about the material, and I get to ask him questions but I'm not clear about things. I'm perfect in that. But if I walk into a classroom and the only thing I have to do is look at graphs and diagram graphs, and then my test, or I need to fill in labels of graphs, I'm going to fail. I'm not a visual learner. It's going to take me so much more to learn to get there. And so it could be a learning style thing. It could be that your professor is not teaching the way that you learn best. And so talking to them one-on-one, knowing what your learning style is and what you can do to learn this information best, that's all part of becoming a good student. But that's what I mean. But more than anything, I would go talk to the professor and saying, I'm studying, I'm here, I'm being a good student, I'm being earnest. There are some things I'm obviously not getting. What am I missing here? And your professors are authorities on the subject, so they should be able to maybe give you a little bit more help. And maybe point you toward resources. It could be, it could be that your specific learning style. Maybe there's a resource online that you can look at studying something outside of what's being prepared in class that would really help you get it more than the lecture that is there.
I mean, I have this built-up hatred sort of towards some of my teachers.
Yeah.
But when I am going out and I'm studying all night long for stuff, and I'm not prepared, and I go in and I know in the past we've been having quizzes and tests on the material, and you're ready. You go in there and we're not having quizzes today on all that information you studied for.
Yeah.
And then things come up and you're trying to do your homework and you got your jobs and all that stuff.
Right.
You can't fully study the next set of material. And you go in there tired and, oh, we're having a quiz today on this, on the stuff you're least prepared on.
Yeah.
When, it's like,
It can be frustrating.
it's just very frustrating.
And I would say too, to those things, I would say getting to know your professor, making sure that you know your syllabus really, really well, also really helpful. Knowing what your teacher expects out of you is very, very helpful. Knowing that sometimes that they do exams, sometimes they don't, is helpful. And I mean, it may be a pessimist about stuff, but maybe that it's just your luck, right? Like, so that lets you know that you can't be off. If those quizzes mean so much to your grade, then you need to be in tip-top shape to take an exam, take a quiz every time that there might be an opportunity to get a quiz taken, whether or not it's there or not. So in the end, it's helpful if you have a cumulative exam, because you're going to have to be getting cumulative at the end of the year. You're going to need to know that information anyway. So anything that you're not immediately touched on, it's not all for naught. It will help you down the road on the cumulative exam. But that is frustrating. Anything else? Well, I appreciate it. Y'all come back to me. These can be helpful. It really can.